Have you ever extended your hand in kindness, only to watch it be dismissed? Have you ever sacrificed for others, only to be met with indifference or, worse, disrespect? You hold the door open, and they walk past without a nod. You help a friend in need, and suddenly your generosity is expected, not appreciated. A dangerous realization dawns. The more you give freely, the less they value it. But why? Because kindness without wisdom is a weakness, and weakness invites contempt. The Stoics knew this truth well. Marcus Aurelius warned us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If kindness stems from fear, fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, then your soul becomes the color of servitude. You become a slave, not to chains, but to the expectations of those who take you for granted. But when kindness is given with purpose, with self-respect and discipline, it becomes a force no one can ignore. 1. The pitfall of endless giving. Have you ever wondered why those who give the most are often the ones who receive the least gratitude? Why is it that the more you offer, the less people seem to appreciate it? This is not a failure of kindness. It is a failure of wisdom. Picture a man named John. He is the kind of neighbor everyone wishes they had. When someone needs help, he is the first to step in. A friend forgets their keys. John drives across town to deliver a spare. A neighbor's fence is broken. He postpones his own projects to fix it. At first, his kindness is met with heartfelt gratitude. People admire him. They call him selfless. But over time, something changes. The gratitude fades. The admiration turns into expectation. One day, when John finally says no, because he has his own obligations, he is met not with understanding, but with criticism. The same people who once praised his generosity now accuse him of being selfish. This is the curse of the endlessly giving. The Stoics understood that human nature often mistakes unlimited kindness for servitude. When you always give without restraint, people stop seeing your actions as generosity. Instead, they begin to assume you are simply fulfilling a duty. Your kindness becomes the norm, and once something becomes the norm, it loses its perceived value. Seneca warned us, you should live according to nature. And nature is balanced. The sun does not shine endlessly without setting. The ocean does not rise without falling. There is a cycle to all things, and yet, people like John believe they must always be available, always be giving, always be sacrificing. But here's the truth. Kindness without boundaries is servitude. And no man is respected who does not respect himself. To give without wisdom is not an act of virtue. It is an act of self-destruction. The moment you allow others to dictate your generosity, you are no longer kind. You are a tool to be used at their convenience. The solution? Give with intention, not obligation. Offer kindness, but never at the expense of your self-respect. A wise man does not fear saying no. A wise man understands that true generosity is not in giving endlessly, but in giving meaningfully. 2. The fine line between kindness and submission. There is a moment in every giver's life when they realize their kindness is no longer seen as a virtue, but as an expectation. The shift is subtle, almost imperceptible. At first, people are grateful. They express thanks, admiration, even respect. But as time passes, something changes. The gratitude fades. The admiration dulls. What was once appreciated becomes assumed. And when you finally hesitate, when you finally dare to say no, you are met not with understanding, but with disappointment. Why? Because kindness without boundaries is not kindness at all. It is submission. Consider Mark, a father who dedicates his life to his family. He works long hours to provide for them. He fixes things around the house. He sacrifices his weekends, his hobbies, even his health, to ensure that his children and spouse have everything they need. At first, his family appreciates his dedication. They call him selfless, reliable, a great man. But then, one day, Mark is exhausted. He needs a break. For the first time, he says, "I can't do it today." And what is he met with? Not concern, not appreciation for all he has already done. No, he is met with disappointment, with complaints. "You always help. Why not now?" This is the moment Mark realizes the bitter truth. His kindness did not inspire respect. It created entitlement. The Stoics teach us that everything in life must be done with reason and intention. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your kindness stems from fear, the fear of disappointing others, of not being liked, of conflict, then your soul becomes the color of dependence. You are no longer kind because you choose to be. You are kind because you feel you must be. And that is not virtue. That is chains. A true Stoic knows that boundaries do not diminish kindness. They strengthen it. If you say yes to every request, your kindness loses its meaning. If you never draw the line, people will never know when they have crossed it. So the next time someone asks for your help, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of genuine goodwill or out of fear? Will my yes today lead to unspoken expectations tomorrow? Kindness, when given wisely, is a gift. But kindness without boundaries, that is simply the slow erosion of your own worth. 3. Being firm without losing your true self. There is a quiet tragedy in the life of the endlessly kind. They begin as givers, but they end as ghosts. Ghosts of who they once were, tired, drained, and resentful. Not because they gave, but because they gave without limits. Picture Jack, a man known for his boundless generosity. Need help moving? Jack is the first to show up, hauling boxes in the summer heat. A coworker is struggling with deadlines? Jack picks up their slack without complaint. He says yes so often that people stop asking if he can help. They just assume he will. But one day Jack reaches his breaking point. He's exhausted. He needs rest. And so, for the first time, he says, "I can't." And suddenly the admiration vanishes. The same people who once called him selfless now call him unreliable. Some even resent him. This is the cruel paradox of unchecked kindness. The more you give, the less they value it. The Stoics understood this truth well. Kindness, if not fortified with self-respect, is mistaken for weakness. Epictetus warned us, "No man is free who is not master of himself." If you give without limits, if you say yes out of habit rather than choice, then you are not free. You are merely fulfilling a role that others have assigned you. But how do you stop this cycle without becoming cold, without losing your true self? The answer is simple. You must learn to give with intention, not obligation. Consider Emily, a mother who has spent years putting her family before herself. She sacrifices her hobbies, her personal time, even her well-being, ensuring that her children and spouse have everything they need. At first, they appreciate it, but soon it becomes expected. She is no longer thanked. She is just assumed to be available. Then, one day, she makes a decision. She carves out one evening a week for herself. Yoga, reading, simple solitude. At first, her family resists. They complain. They are uncomfortable with this change. But Emily does not waver. And something interesting happens. Over time, they begin to respect her boundaries. They begin to appreciate her time, rather than assume it belongs to them. This is the power of self-respect. A Stoic does not stop being kind. He simply refuses to be used. A simple, firm no does not make you cruel. It makes your kindness more meaningful because it becomes a choice, not an expectation. Give freely, but never at the cost of yourself. 4. Striking the right balance between kindness and self-worth. There is a dangerous lie that many of us have been conditioned to believe, that true kindness means putting others before ourselves at all costs, that self-sacrifice is the ultimate virtue. But the reality is far darker, because when you always put others first, you teach them that you come last. Consider Josh, a hard-working employee who is always willing to take on extra tasks. At first, his colleagues admire him. They praise his dedication. But over time, something shifts. They stop asking if he can handle more work. They simply pile it on. He no longer receives gratitude, just expectation. One day, Josh reaches his limit. He politely declines an unnecessary request, expecting some understanding. But instead, he is met with disappointment. The same people who once praised him now question his work ethic. It is in this moment that Josh realizes the painful truth. His endless giving did not earn him respect. It made him disposable. The Stoics understood that balance is the key to everything. Seneca once said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." If you give endlessly without protecting your own needs, you become scattered, depleted. Your kindness loses its strength, and so do you. So how do we break this cycle? How do we remain kind without allowing others to take us for granted? The answer lies in boundaries. Imagine a mother who has spent years sacrificing every moment for her family. She gives up her hobbies, her dreams, her rest, all for them. At first, her efforts are acknowledged, but soon they become expected. Her sacrifices go unnoticed, unspoken, as though they were never a choice to begin with. Then one day, she does something radical. She decides to take one evening a week for herself, to attend a yoga class, to read, to simply be alone. At first, her family protests. They resist the change, but over time, something shifts. They begin to see her as a person, not just a resource. This is the power of self-worth. A Stoic understands that kindness is most powerful when it is given from a place of strength, not submission. So the next time you are asked to give, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of love or out of obligation? Will my yes today lead to resentment tomorrow? Because true kindness is not about saying yes to everything. It is about knowing when to say no. 5. Turning kindness into a source of inner strength. Kindness is often seen as an external act, a gift given to others, an offering of goodwill. But what if we have misunderstood its true nature? What if kindness, at its strongest, is not about how others receive it, but about how we choose to give it? Too many people treat kindness as a transaction. They give expecting gratitude, expecting recognition, expecting to be treated with the same respect they offer. And when that respect does not come, they feel wounded, betrayed. But here is the truth. If your kindness depends on how others react, then it is not truly yours. A Stoic does not offer kindness because he hopes to be liked. He offers kindness because it is an expression of his strength, a reflection of his principles. Marcus Aurelius warned us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Consider a man who tirelessly helps his coworker, only to watch that same coworker take all the credit. The sting of betrayal is undeniable. But does it change the fact that he acted with integrity? Does it make his kindness worthless? Number, because true kindness does not need validation. Or think of a mother who dedicates herself to caring for her family, only to feel invisible over time. If her kindness was given in the hope of constant recognition, she will be left resentful. But if she acts out of love, out of a belief in who she chooses to be, then no amount of ingratitude can take that away from her. This is the Stoic way. Kindness, when rooted in inner conviction, becomes unshakable. It does not demand applause. It does not falter in the face of indifference. But this does not mean allowing yourself to be used. There is a balance. Kindness must be paired with wisdom. Seneca reminds us, wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. But not every opportunity should be taken blindly. Ask yourself, am I giving because I choose to, or because I fear the consequences of saying no? Does my kindness strengthen me, or does it deplete me? A Stoic gives not to be rewarded, but because he is strong enough to do so. His kindness is not weakness, it is power. And that is why no one, not the ungrateful, not the selfish, not the disrespectful, can ever take it away from him. The world will not always recognize your kindness. It will not always reward you for your generosity. But that is not why you should be kind. A Stoic does not give because he seeks approval. He gives because it aligns with his principles. But he also understands that kindness without wisdom leads to exhaustion, resentment, and loss of self-respect. So apply this wisdom to your life. The next time you feel compelled to say yes, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this out of strength or out of fear? Does this act of kindness align with my values, or is it an attempt to please others at my own expense? If the answer does not serve your growth, then have the courage to say no, not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. True kindness is never about being submissive. It is about standing firm in who you are. Give generously, but with boundaries. Help others, but never at the cost of yourself. Because the greatest kindness you can ever show is the kindness you give while still honoring your own worth.